I'll kick things off with a welcome to one and all. I'm sending you wishes for safety and peace tonight and always. For those of you I don't know, I'm Allison Green Myers. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the program director here at the Highlights Foundation, and tonight I'm speaking with you from the traditional and contemporary lands of the Susquehannock people from my father's home. Welcome to this special May HF Gather. With me tonight from the Highlights Foundation is Alex Viasante, our program manager. Hi, Alex. Christina Osajoglu, our marketing director. Hi, Christina. And George Brown, our executive director. Nice to see you, George. There are a few other friendly faces on the screen as well. Our celebrated panelists, Daria and Harlan and Judy. They'll be formally introduced soon, but welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. I did want to note a few things. Captions are part of tonight's session. If you'd like to use closed captioning, you can enable that on your Zoom screen. And if you're watching the recording, there will be closed captions available in the recording as well. A note for our attendees with us live tonight, this is a webinar style program, so we can't see your video, we can't hear your audio, but we can see messages that you're placing in the chat right now. Alex will open that up for everyone in just a moment, and we can see the Q&A feature. So if you're here with us live, we hope that you'll pop those hellos, any of your memories from summer camp, into the chat, any ahas, and then any of the questions that you have, please put them in the Q&A feature so that we can find them at the end of the webinar. Maybe they're questions about summer camp or any of the Highlights Foundation offerings, or questions for our panelists that are with us tonight. If you're here with us live, you've probably heard this before, but I do want to share that in these spaces here on Zoom, really anywhere we come together as the Highlights Foundation community, we ask for your respectful engagement. We strive for a safe and inclusive environment, which means we ask that you join us tonight with no hate, no harm, and no harassment of any kind. Let's take good care of one another and look for ways that we can uplift each other, ways that we can support children with stories and storytellers. And a special shout out this week to our educators. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all those teachers out there. I want to make sure that I get the title correct for tonight's session, because this is a Christina Osajoglu magic kind of title. It's a long one. It says a quick jolt of inspiration to remind us why we do this, and a summer camp reunion to remind us how we do it. I think my job is a quick jolt, and I hope that I do our quick jolt justice. I'm honored to be able to kick things off tonight. About a month ago, Christina chatted with me about tonight's gather. She gave me her vision for the session. And I think if I remember correctly, she said, you know, it's a free community gathering centered on the summer camp vibe. And I loved that. My mind really started to churn. Summer camp is uniquely a part of my journey here at the Highlights Foundation, first as a student. My very first summer camp experience was at the original, I'll call it. It was the home away from home adventure between the Highlights Foundation and the Chautauqua Institution. This was a week-long summer camp experience, and it began in 1985, though I attended for my first time in 2006. It was dreamt up by the founder of the Highlights Foundation, Kent Brown. We can thank Kent for that. Kent wanted to bring children's book writers and illustrators to a place where the arts were more than alive. They were humming with activity. He wanted writers and illustrators to be paired with mentors who would help to inspire and encourage them in their writing for children. Kent asked the faculty very specifically for rich and righteous lectures. And although he didn't script it, what I noticed when I went to Chautauqua for the first time, and then 2 other times after that, there was magic to that summer camp because there was that day of all sorts of activities, one-to-ones with your mentor and those lectures that I talked about. And then at night, you had an opportunity to be out in the fresh open air. You might hear violins practicing in the distance. And then suddenly, you might see someone who had just spent the day doing what you did, and you'd watch them get swept away in drafting their next great story for kids. It was magic. So after a few decades, I was there when the program shifted fully to the home of our founders of Highlights for Children. And the completion of the barn at Boyd's Mills really made it time to say goodbye, at least for then, to Chautauqua and hello to our first summer camp at the barn. We set the week the same time as the original, mid-July, and we welcomed creatives to gather and share what it means to craft stories for the world's most important people. I was really honored to help build that first summer camp that transitioned from Chautauqua to the barn at Boyd's Mills, and I've continued to be a part of them year over year. Now we take up almost all of July. We have 3 workshops under the summer camp banner: summer camp in fiction, one in nonfiction, and one in illustration. And each one of them echoes Kent's original vision: bring children's book writers and illustrators to a place where the arts are more than alive. They are humming with activity. Be sure that each writer or illustrator is paired with a generous, talented, caring mentor, and engage in the rich and righteous lectures to discover what it means to create stories for children. And then, of course, what Kent didn't script, but what happens naturally, that magic. Because I'll tell you, I'm there every year, and no matter how busy the day's activities are, those inspirational lectures do something to us. Those breakout sessions where we're starting to get ideas down on the page do something for us. There's fresh air, there's conversations, there might be a fireplace Q&A. And then you walk past the Barnes Library and you see a writer starting a new story, or you go past the art coop and the light will be on and someone will be sketching away at a character. It's pretty magic. Summer Camp at the Barn is just like the original. It's where we think deeply about crafting stories that can inspire the world's most important people, our children. But if it's okay with you, I think tonight I want to go back. Not all the way to the start of summer camps, because I think I kind of just did that, but to a month ago when Christina talked to me about her vision for tonight and asked me to give a mini lecture to kick things off. It's something I do at most summer camps. So it seemed obvious. I'll tell you, that Allison, the month ago Allison, was a very different person though. I said yes to Christina because I almost always say yes to Christina. She has the best ideas and I love her. And I love the Highlights Foundation community. And I love summer camp, what it gave to me as a student and what it continues to give to the foundation. So I guess today really isn't so different. I love the Highlights Foundation community. I recognize the gift of summer camp, but I think on the inside, I'm different. I've been changed. I'm changing. Life has a way of doing that to us, changing us from day to day and moment to moment. I could be biased, But I think those of us who have the honor to craft stories for children, those of us who really turn up the volume on our hearts, we have an advantage like no other to gather up these changes. We store them like Frederick in his stone wall, or Ryan with her treasure box, making sunshine. We creatives gather as much as we can from life's smallest moments to its biggest lessons. And friends, these lessons are everywhere for us to gather. This month, I've been gathering lessons about grief. I might have said even a month ago that I'm somebody who knows grief. She and I have spent a lot of time together. I've held her up close in my hand. I don't think of her like a precious heirloom. She's a whispering thing that usually comes to me at night. Only these days, the lessons aren't about me and her. These days, she's trying to show me how to say goodbye to my father. You may gather things differently. That's the beauty of the way our minds work and our experiences, the way they find meaning. For me, I'm observing, I'm examining, I'm working at it so heartily and so heartily. It feels sometimes like those spring shoots clawing their way towards sunlight. The only way they can grow is to go through it themselves. The best stories come from that too. In this past month, my family has been searching for meaning individually, the way that only our hearts and our minds will let us. For me, I'm connecting the concrete to concept, like I did when I was a teacher. I'm letting emotion sit side by side with reality, the way my mind tells me to do story. Emotion and reality are uniquely entwined. When my father began his last journey, I didn't see a road like some people do. I didn't call on a lighted path. I'm almost embarrassed to say, I saw a banana. I was called home in early April to care for my father alongside my siblings. This time there were bedliners and words that ended in "een." But all I could see when I walked in the room was this banana. The reality is someone, probably my brother or my sister, had tried to get my father to eat something. And they'd given up and they placed it down on his bedside table, unopened and uneaten. But reality just doesn't mean much to me without emotion. So I kept my eye on that banana from the very beginning. I watched it. I watched the way it changed. The way it was once this one thing, this thing I knew, and simply by the passage of time, it transformed. A banana sat by my father's bed. Was it there for 77 years and I only noticed it today? Friends, I don't know. I take emotion, I take reality, and I try my best to make meaning. A few weeks back, I got a chance to visit with a group of teenagers, photographers, all of them. I was outside my element. They were ages 14 to 18. And I was talking with them a bit about this. I was talking about this creative life, this emotion plus reality, and what we're able to gather meaning with. The way our minds work, like these photos they had those early crocuses. They were shoots that were coming up in a field. And I thought about those crocuses. Their story was the beginning of a new season. And for me, I told them, my story grows through words. And for them, those teenagers, their stories were blooming based on the images. So I don't know if it was the day or seeing something ahead. I'm not sure, but my mind started doing what she does. And I asked them, do you know what I mean? Emotion, reality, trying to make meaning. And those teenagers, they nodded. They nodded enthusiastically, and they showered me with their images of sunsets that were saying goodbye to the day, and their butterflies that were saying goodbye to their former selves. They knew, those photographers. We know. We're creatives. All of this makes me think of one of my favorite Billy Collins quotes, and I could gather a few Billy Collins quotes, but I love this one for its simplicity. Billy Collins says, look at the clouds, watch chipmunks. Who else has the time for watching but poets? Who else has the time for watching? Billy and I aren't friends, but if we were, I might say, Billy, maybe it isn't time at all. It's us. We're creatives. Who else can't keep themselves from telling stories about bananas or sunsets or butterflies? Who else but the creative? The artist, the poet, the photographer, the writer. We make meaning through our hands and our hearts, like those crocuses clawing for sunlight. Our minds claw, they reach for creativity. We want to explain, we want to explore, we want to express, we want to examine all of our experiences, grief and love, hurt and joy, butterflies and sunsets. Who else has the heart for it but we creatives? You've gathered here tonight because you have the heart for it, this creative life. As storytellers, we gather in our own ways. For me, I hear words and they become sticky. I can't let them float by. I have to bring them down to a page. Or I see objects like bananas and I give them too much meaning. It feels like too much meaning and yet not quite enough. I don't know what will happen to that damn banana. And I don't know what happens next. Maybe all I can know is this creative life. I can watch the clouds. I can feel the sunsets. I can know the butterflies. Because maybe like Billy suggests, I have the time. But more likely because I can't stop myself from doing it, from feeling it. I don't think you can either. Your mind and your heart want to make meaning out of this one precious, terrible, lovely, lonely, wondrous planet. Imagine what that does for you and me to take the time to do just that. But imagine what it does for our readers when we take that time, for our children. If you are called to open your heart up to this creative life, do it. Reach out, grow through it, observe and learn. Create the stories that only your heart knows how to tell. Soon, I will stop quickly jolting. Maybe that's just my knee bouncing, and turn things over to Christina and Alex and our panelists. But first, I think they'll let me give you all a wish. And I'll say my wish to all of you tonight is that you be good to yourselves, you creatives. Be good to your hearts, be good to your minds. They're doing hard work gathering. Take time to care for one another and just take all the time you need to tell your stories. because whether you're published or not, whether you're pinning down those daily words or not, know that you are day by day, moment by moment, experience by experience, gathering. So let's gather and be grateful together. Thank you for giving me time to open up tonight's special community gathering all about summer camp. Christina, with that, I will turn things right over to you.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate it. You know, when we planned this webinar, we planned to break it into 2 parts, but I didn't know we would need like a composure break in the middle. So that was a lot, and I don't know how to follow it up, but I'm going to try. So thank you, Allison, for sharing your light and your words with us. I can't tell you how much we all appreciate it, for sure. Like Allison said, I'm Christina and I work in marketing for the foundation. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm joining you tonight from Grand Rapids, Michigan, on the traditional and contemporary lands of the Odawa people. And I want to start by explaining why we broke this webinar into 2 parts the way that we did. The jolt of inspiration with the mini keynote. Check. We have been jolted. We have been inspired. And a panel to bring us all together. And I'll continue by sharing a story about with you about Allison, because I can't not tell a story about Allison after that. As her debut novel was coming into the world, she was busy. There were book launch events, there was marketing, everything else on top of that. And she was still the program director for the Highlights Foundation at the same time too. And I remember distinctly asking her how she was. And she said, I'll always remember this. It was beautiful. She said she just couldn't wait to see her book in a kid's hands. And that was what was bringing her through that time. And, you know, our mission at the Highlights Foundation is, of course, to amplify the voices of storytellers who inform, educate, and inspire children to be their best selves. And even if you aren't working day to day, like I am so lucky to do with someone like Allison, who's a living, breathing jolt of inspiration every day, I think we all know that innately in and of itself. The reason that we're here is kids. Every author and illustrator that I have the pleasure of working with at the Highlights Foundation, when you ask them the why about why they do this, it's kids. Their voices are different. Their specific reasons for writing for kids or illustrating for kids are different, but it comes back to the same thing. And you know what? Sometimes we do need that little jolt that Allison just gave us to keep us going, because this industry, every book and piece we work on, life in general is full of highs and lows and peaks and valleys and low points and high points that we're all getting through. So that inspiration is one thing that Allison just gave us. But another practical way that we get through is together. And I think that that's one of the reasons that being in this space together, listening to Allison deliver those words is so powerful, because we're doing it together. We're in community, we're sharing space, and we all have the same goal: to inspire kids. So that's why the second part of this webinar is a panel to really celebrate that togetherness. And we brought together 3 panelists from the Highlights Foundation community that have all attended summer camps in some way. And that's not an accident. Like Allison talked about before, summer camps are how the Highlights Foundation got started back in 1985. And that mentorship, that community, that inspiration, they're all tenets of what we do at the Highlights Foundation all the time. But there's really nowhere else that they're more in action than summer camp. So the 3 people we brought here tonight are going to talk a little bit about that togetherness that sustains them, whether it be mentorship, community, craft building, everything. So I'm going to introduce them one at a time, have a little bit of conversation with each of them, and then we'll open it up to the Q&A at the end. So like Allison said, we have that Q&A box. If you've got a question for the panelists, if you've got a question about summer camp, if you've got a question about anything, put it in that Q&A box and we'll do our best to get to some of those at the end. Okay, to start, I'm going to ask Daria to join me. I'm going to make sure she gets here. Perfect. Daria. Daria is an author, illustrator, educator, speaker, wonderful friend of the Highlights Foundation. She's been a little bit of everything here: an attendee, a fellow, faculty. She was also our 2021 Artist of the Year. And Daria, I asked you to be here today because I love your perspective on the mentorship side of the relationship. You've been both a mentee and a mentor. You started out as an attendee for summer camp in 2019 in fiction. And now you're on summer camp faculty illustration last year, and will be again this year. And I also know you found a mentor in the late Floyd Cooper, who was a big friend of the Highlights Foundation too. So that's your little introduction, but I talked about your experience with summer camp, but can you just talk a little bit about what mentorship has meant in your career, whether it be from summer camp or just in general? What is that togetherness of mentorship? What has that meant for your career?
Well, when I first started going to highlights in 2019, when I went to summer camp for the very first time, I was going through a lot of private, personal things. And I remember on my way there, I was just like, gosh, I don't know what to expect. But as soon as I arrived, I didn't even go inside my cabin. I sat on my rocking chair on the porch, and I realized at that moment, I was like, wow, I am really empty right now. But I also had this very very strong sense of self that I wasn't going to leave empty. I had published a few books. I was in this very awkward moment of my career waiting on the next book. I didn't know at the time that it would be a whole nother year and a half, but I was feeling a little bit like I'm not quite sure what's next. Um, and so I went with the expectation of just my entire mind and heart was just open to whatever I could see. I didn't know who I would meet. I didn't know what would happen when I got there, but um, I felt like I needed to shift. And I want to encourage people. I went to I had published picture books at the time. I had 3 picture books, but I wanted to gain more understanding about novels, and so I was a little bit unsure about this shift, and I decided to go to a summer camp that was completely focused on fiction, not just novels, but also picture books. But I decided to take some classes that focused on long fiction. And what I found was just a sense of fellowship and belonging in a space that I didn't feel so I was qualified to try to walk down. I met Shadra Strickland there, and I could remember her just encouraging me quite a bit. Um, I met Renee Watson there, and Tiffany Jackson. I met so many wonderful people who were supportive, and I just had a wonderful time. I remember the workshops that I went to, and I took it in, and nothing felt as though it was too much. It all came in like nice doses, and then I could go back to that porch and that rocking chair and take more in. Um, and and I went home like I could begin again. And so, as faculty, I tried to re-gift the gifts that I received as a student.
I love that. I love that. And how do you, when you're filling those, I was actually watching it gather in preparation for this, and you talked about how one of the things Floyd did was hold up a mirror for you,
Mm.
to see yourself as an artist, and that was really important. And I hear that echoed in a lot of people that I talk to, that mentorship is not as much shaping the voice, but helping the person find the voice. So do you find that, was that a gift that was given to you, or do you give
Oh,
that?
absolutely. I think one thing that Floyd helped me to understand is Floyd stayed close to his own heart as a student. And I think that helped him be close to the heart of the people that he mentored, because um, he was always constantly learning. At the end of his career, he was learning, how to do more digitally. It never felt as though it was this dynamic of higher and lower. I always felt as though I was an equal partner with Floyd. We shared ideas. I mean, he was much more experienced than me, but the way that he shared his wisdom was from a place of equality. And I just think he had a gift at that. I think I was very blessed to experience mentorship done very well and done with grace. and compassion. And so I think it's important for me to extend that to the people that I mentor at summer camp when I meet them. And I think what happens is we come to camp or we go to any kind of retreat with some sort of expectation. And sometimes what happens doesn't necessarily meet our expectation. And it's a mentor's responsibility to be that grace parachute that says, this is your journey, embrace it. And one step at a time, and it's going to be okay. The journey that you have is the journey you're supposed to be on.
Love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing, Daria. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'll bring you back later. I'm going to invite
Okay.
Harlan now. Thank you so much. Hi, Harlan. I'm so excited to see you again. I want to make sure. There we go. Perfect. I'm so excited to see you again, Harlan. Being in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I don't get to come to campus that often. But last month I was on campus at the same time I was talking to Allison about a month ago about this, and we were planning for this event, and Harlan was there at the time on a personal retreat with some friends in community writing, reading, revising, all that good stuff. But before she was a personal retreater, she attended summer camp in fiction in 2022. And I remember I was outside at the table with you and we were sitting together, and I said, what's the biggest takeaway that you had from summer camp? And pretty much without missing a beat, you said people was the biggest takeaway. And that's why I invited you here, because I think that's beautiful. And that's togetherness in a nutshell. So I was wondering if you would just tell us a little bit about, tell us a bit about that. What is community like as part of your process, whether it's in summer camp or just in general? I know it's a big driver for you.
Yeah, so whether you believe it or not, I'm an introvert. So one of the things I've really been working hard on is kind of getting out there more and pushing myself to make more connections. And that's something that Highlights has really helped me with. And I really have, I guess, kind of three parts to my whole like people community thing. And the first is the fellow campers, of course. You're all there at this summer camp with the same goals in mind: to learn, to make progress, to finish, to publish, to reach children. And, those similar goals make for really strong ties. And we're all there together all of the time, going through the same things. And, there's just so much bonding without even realizing it. Like you spend some time at the campfire at night playing some games or, whatever. And, even if you're a complete introvert, like me, and, want to stay in your cabin all the time or whatever, there's just so many points at which you're interacting with people that, you can't help but make connections. And not only that, but it's not overwhelming. Like that, I've gone to a lot of different conferences and things like that. And, you've got thousands and thousands of people that it's so overwhelming. And even if you hand out your business card, no one's going to remember who handed them the business card. And, but at summer camp, it's like 20 some people, and you're eating lunch with them, breakfast, dinner, having appetizers, you're seeing them multiple times. You're having these like meaningful conversations with everyone. And, I've stayed in touch with several of the people who are at my summer camp. We have group texts, we have Discord servers, we've joined up in writing groups, we've beta read each other's work, we've cheered each other through the writing journey. And it's been really, really important to like keep us all going, especially, how the world is right now when life gets in the way and we kind of start feeling like failures. It's great to have those people that know exactly where you are, and they've been there too, and they're able to kind of help you like just push through it or just give you the support that you need. And even those who I haven't kept in touch with, when we come across each other, it's hugs, it's, hey, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? I mean, the last time I was there, I ran into another person who was at my summer camp. And she was like, I'm sorry, I haven't stayed in touch. But yeah, like, so like for the, actual campers, like that's great. And then of course there's the instructors, and kind of like riding on Daria's comments about the mentorship and everything. I mean, there's nowhere where you can be so close to the instructors and like ask them anything. And, like they're eating at the meals with you, like, so you can sit there and you can chat with them. And I've gotten so much, like, I've had some really standout conversations with the instructors there, outside of lectures, that have helped me like redirect my writing in a way that's more impactful and useful for the readers, and also more genuinely represents myself. So for me, that's been huge, and probably even more so than like sitting in the lectures themselves, like just having that one-on-one with them. And then my third part to that is, of course, the crew at Highlights. I mean, there's Allison and Alex and George and but not only do you get like these great interactions with them, but everyone at Highlights treats you like family. I mean, like, you come, and no matter how many times you've been there, you're family, like the moment you step on campus. And it's just a great feeling, and it's very welcoming and magical, and I love it. So
Love it. Thanks for sharing. I do have a question. You were talking about as an introverted person, community is an interesting concept, and I've heard that echoed a lot too. Do you think that the community that you build at summer camp or elsewhere, has that changed your process at all, or kind of like filled your well to fuel a process that was already there? If that question
it's just helped me like kind of come out of my shell and get more comfortable talking to people. And even when I was at other conferences and things, I was able to just be more open, I guess. So
we are happy to have you as part of our community here, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some of our questions tonight. I'm going to bring you back to for the Q&A in a second, but I'm going to bring in Judy now. Thanks, Arlen. Alex was working the spotlight. It's a little, she has to pick the different people. Oh, hopefully hope it says Judy is connecting. There we go. Perfect. Okay, I think we can switch now. So when Allison and I were talking about who might be able to offer some perspective from a nonfiction summer camp, Judy's name came to mind here, because Judy, you're really building a career with the help of the Highlights Foundation. You started with a nonfiction summer camp. That was your first experience. You've also picked a lot of other courses that have helped build your career. You're working for hire now. You're working to grow that career, but you've also come back to summer camp 2 more times. So A, we're so happy to have you in our community, but B, if you could talk a little bit about kind of those decisions you've made to come back to summer camp and to be together in community. What have those decisions kind of meant for your career, and what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out, maybe like you were back in 2016 when you came? Oh, I think you're on mute, Judy.
Yeah, for some reason. Okay. Well, the summer camp experience for me is like walking into my favorite college course and being able to stay for the duration of the term and pick the professor's brains and like stay with the people that were there. My actual first one was in 2016, was both when fiction and nonfiction were combined. And each and every keynote and workshop session was like a masterclass in writing for children. And I keep returning because although I took copious notes and reviewed them after I got home, I realized that all the learning that I attained from the summer camp just created more questions and made me want to delve more into specific things and put them into practice. So I really love summer camp because you get to workshop a topic and then you have the opportunity to practice it right away and then get instant feedback from the mentors, the community that's there, and the group, and you can all stay connected. Um, as for why I continue to go, it's because Highlights is just so magical. When they split the camps into nonfiction and fiction, I realized I have even more to learn and wanted to delve deeper into nonfiction, particularly as I got more work. I went and took the work for hire workshop, which was amazing as well. That led me to having nonfiction jobs, and um, the nonfiction summer camp was just a great way to learn more about researching and more about the different types of nonfiction that was out there. The first one I signed up for actually after the first summer camp was during COVID, and it was virtual, and that was really great because I was searching for community during that time, since everyone was here or at home. But I really missed being at Highlights and just like being immersed in it. And as Harlan said, just being able to gather and learn with others and like see that these mentors that I held to such high esteem were just like me and like all of us, and also going through the same processes that we're going. They're just a little further down the path. Um, and just being around, writing people and geeking out a little bit about all the mentors that are there and the faculty. The food, of course, is awesome. Um, so I love it. And I would return every single year. The first time I went, I remember one of the other campers there, Liz Rice, she has now a scholarship program for teachers. And she had told me, this is my 10th one. And I was like, wow, how do you make that happen? And everyone said, you just get hooked because it's just so great. You want to return. And it's like you're just returning for yourself and just giving yourself some time to write and be that creative that Allison was talking about.
I love that. I love that. And aside from coming to the Highlights Foundation for someone who's starting this industry, is there anything else that you think a beginner or a person who's just getting started should surround themselves with? I know you found community here, you found mentorship, you found a lot of different things, but any other tips? I know you're involved in a lot of different groups and competitions and things like that. Any other thoughts about that?
Well, I think what I'd like to say to someone just starting out in the business, I just take the time to believe in yourself, to write, to participate in writing communities, whether they're online or in person. Um, they can be local or they can be through taking classes through retreats, such as Highlights. I think, and I know this is a highlights, event, but I say this to anyone that is interested in writing, you have to go to Highlights, save the money, I get so much out of it. I just got a request from an agent to send her more work. And I realized that everything that I sent her was something that I had either created or gotten feedback from while I was at Highlights. These manuscripts that I have wouldn't be where they were had I not gone, because life gets in the way. And the great thing about Highlights is that it motivates you to take the time just to write and to be you. Um, so, and it's so fun to watch just the community that you have, just to see their successes and to see everyone else's like writing dreams come true, and know that yours will too, because of that perseverance that you have in yourself and that you see in others.
That's that perseverance that we build together and we keep together. I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think we're going to bring everybody back here and unspotlight people for Q&A. So if you do have some questions, you can put them in the Q&A. I have a couple that had come in before. One of them came in, it's a little bit of a craft question, but I think it's also a community question too, in general. This person says, I have an agent, she's wonderful and submits my manuscript, but it seems to take forever to hear back from editors. And I think the craft part of the question is, are editors so inundated that it takes them a lot to respond? Is that something that happens? But I think that's interesting because I feel like a lot of the community does a lot of waiting. And when we wait together, then that's a better situation. But I'll throw it out to anybody. Maybe that's a question that we can answer. Daria, maybe. I know you said you were waiting another year and a half for a book that you didn't expect to wait that long for. Maybe you
Right.
can answer that question.
Well, I definitely think, I mean, there's different editors work different ways, but depending on where you are in the lineup and where your book is in the lineup, oftentimes will delay a response from an editor. I'd encourage you to encourage your agent to tap her on the shoulder, just make sure you get in that lineup. But I also think too, what's really important to say in this moment too, is that when you come into community at highlights, one thing that I've learned every single time I've been on campus is that you get to kind of find out the litness of that question, answers to your question from a lot of different perspectives. And people are very open and willing to share what their experiences have been. Because I think we create in these islands of our own, and a lot of us, we may not even know another published author where we live. And we're not, best friends with a bunch of authors that we can text and ask a question like, how long does it take for your editor to get back to you, And so you go to a community where you can ask those questions and listen to see that, yes, that happens. And then B, what do you do when that happens, and so my encouragement to you would be just keep work on something else so that, you can stay in the lineup.
I'd imagine. Judy, do you have anything to add on that? I know you just
Well,
mentioned.
I just returned from an SCBWI conference this weekend, and that was a question that someone had addressed. And one of the agents there said that there's a backlog, even though COVID happened 3 years ago, there's still a backlog of when editors are getting back. So it's taking a lot longer than it has in the past. And then with the strike, the editor strike that happened, I think last winter, that's created a backlog as well. And that's all that I know about it. And that's hearing it from an agent when that was asked.
Got it. Marlon, anything to add to? I know you're in the.
No,
Got
pretty
it.
much the same thing Judy said.
I get it. I also wanted to introduce Alex. I know Allison introduced her before. Alex is a program manager for the Highlights Foundation, but fun fact, she also attended summer camp 2018 at the Highlights Foundation. And I know that was a big part of your journey, Alex. Now she's the program manager, but also an award-winning novelist. So if you want to talk a little bit about your experience, gather some questions, that would be great.
Yeah, and now I also get to hang out with awesome people like Daria and Judy and Harlan, and that makes my whole life. So it's fantastic. But actually, I started coming to Highlights, personal to retreating, before I sold my first book, and then I wrote parts of The Grief Keeper at Highlights, which is just such a source of pride for me. But also, I was able to come out before my book was published in 2018. And even though I had an agent and I had a book under contract, very much as you're all saying, I didn't have this community. I don't know anyone who lives in my town who is an author. And coming to campus and not only meeting all the wonderful people who I'm still friends with, so many of them, but also meeting people like Jazz Hammond, incredibly talented person who just came out with their phenomenal debut, and seeing them grow. And then touching base with the mentors like Lamar Giles, Anna Marie McElmore. It's just, it blew my mind, like that these people would not only be on campus and be available to me and mentor me, but also sit next to me at lunch and be like, oh, what's that interesting thing that you're eating? Or, hey, we should exchange some pages. When Anna Marie McElmore said that to me, I nearly dropped dead. I just nearly fell over. And that's the kind of thing that happens at Highlights, because there is this sort of sense of community and equality where we're all there to be creative and to have this space and to take this time. So I think that, since then, I'm sorry, I just became addicted to going to summer camp and being part of that experience. So I've pretty much been up, I think, almost every year since then. And you can't get rid of me. Yeah.
Never. We would never want to get rid of you ever. We had one question. These kind of questions are a little bit together. Someone was asking, are there critique groups, which I think you can talk a little bit about the mentorship side. And then the other question was, how does Highlights choose mentors for camp? So Alex, I think you start this answer.
Yeah. So, and Harlan knows this from last year, but we have peer groups as part of, there's quite a few components to summer camp, but also time to work on your own work. But there might be a keynote speech, there might be a breakout session, but there also time where you get to work together, peer to peer, which is really amazing because you get to sort of just work on the nitty gritty of those stories, what you've shared with your peer group, and to be like, I don't know why X thing isn't working. And then you can have people ask questions about that and sort of make you think a little bit more deeply about it. So I think that kind of, that plus your one-to-ones with your mentor, you're meeting with your mentor every day, plus the breakout sessions and the keynotes and the mashed potatoes, my personal favorite. That all adds to that sort of fuel for your creative fire. So that's one of the questions. And I think the other question was, how do we choose mentors? So the faculty are the mentors, and we really look at, for example, for fiction, we've got an amazing faculty this year. I'm thrilled and super excited and slightly starstruck. I think I say that every year, but we have Valerie Bowling, we have Isaac Fitzsimmons, we have Alex Gino. Like these faculty members also are your mentors, and we choose them because of the work that they're doing, because of the work that they can do, the way that they work with students, and because of how they write and for children. I mean, that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at all these pieces, and do they fit into the faculty together? And I think, for fiction, I'm going to be up there for fiction this year. You can tell I'm really looking forward to that because it's such a wonderful dynamic. So yeah, I think I answered everybody's question.
Yeah, I think so. I was also talking to one of our staff members who came to the Highlights Foundation via summer camp. And I think they echoed what Harlan said, whereas if you're an introvert, there's lots of community time. And her tip was to make sure that in the afternoon, you have time to work if you need it, but you can also take that time to rest if you need it too, because sometimes resting is working and kind of recharging those batteries. Like that. So
yeah, I mean, thinking is working, right? Daydreaming is working. So
something that I had to be like, find the balance in too is like, maybe since this session is being recorded, I can go take a nap because I needed to like re-energize.
Yeah, especially because the breakouts, there's lots of different topics, and I think we should be publishing the final topic soon, but there's some example topics on the thing. Is pick the ones you want, but also know that those will be available later for sure.
You have time to play. I think that that's important too. Like, I think we write for children. So, we have to get outside of ourselves a little bit, and we go on hikes and we look at the flowers and we go sit by the river, and we carve out time to get close to that childlike heart that we're representing. And I think that that's truly important. And I think that we're doing it in community because we bring with us the stuff that we're going through in life. And then we have this awesome responsibility on our shoulders to find the light in the world. And looking at the news at any given time, it's not easy to find that light in what we do a lot of times. And so a little bit of hope from one person to the next, and it makes the struggle and the challenge to do what we do a lot lighter, a whole lot lighter.
One
Yes.
thing I agree with you wholeheartedly about the play, but you also have time to write, and I just love that you're surrounded with a diversity of people. Like there are people from all over the world that come to highlights and have been in all of the groups that I've been in. It's amazing. So you get feedback from different people from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And someone had said something about critique groups. With my last one and throughout all of them, I can always reach out to anyone that I have made a connection with from my highlights summer camps and say, hey, will you read this really quick? Can we exchange a manuscript? And actually, our last nonfiction one, we do so regularly. We meet once a month via Zoom. We share work. Will pass it out. So it doesn't just stay there with the summer camp, but it can extend further if you so choose, which is really great.
Anything to add there, Alex, with the play? I think that's you're working on the schedule like right as we speak. So anything to add on that part?
I mean, Harlan knows this, but there may have been a dance party last summer during summer camp fiction. But that's part of that play. We want to work hard and think hard and daydream, but we also want to let loose. And that might be a fun game of Pictionary where, it's like illustrators against writers, for example, which we've had before too with Chandra. There's just a lot of room. And I was thinking about what Judy was saying about some other conferences and Harlan too, how conferences are great. I love conferences, but they don't have time. They're very compressed. And there's you might meet people and it might be a quick conversation. And there's a lot of maybe there's some exchange, but there's no time. With highlights and at summer camp, we contain time, and you need time because that growth can't happen always in a compressed schedule. You need the time to, have a conversation, and then maybe that next day have another part of that conversation because you've thought of something, because something's occurred to you, because, you had a brainstorm and you need someone who you were just talking to a minute ago or yesterday or at the fireside to be like, listen, I thought of something, or this has happened to me. I thought about something about your character, that your character stayed with me and haunted me last night, and I wanted to tell you something. And that time to build the community is really something special.
Yes. We are fast running out of time here. And I'm sorry, because it's so fun to talk to all of you. Speaking of time, but we have to wrap it up here. Alex, I was trying to figure out a way to drop a link in the chat, but I don't know if it's open to me to do that. But
what link are you trying to drop?
I was going to put a link to the summer camp pages. Yeah, the summer, and we can send it an email after the webinar too. Sure. There's a landing page that just has some information about the summer camps and all of them. If you would like to join us this year, we would love to have you. There's also, I'm going to put a link to talk to an ambassador. If you're not sure if it's right for you or if you're looking for something else, we can put that there. I've also been on a quest to gather just some experiences about summer camp. We talked a lot about it today, but if you have an experience to share, there's a new page on our website where you can share that story with us. And we've gathered some really cool stories that have come out. They're on that first landing page that I'm going to give to you if I can figure out how to do it tonight, but if not, in the email. Please do share your story because it means the world to us to kind of keep in touch with the Highlights Foundation community and see all the stories that you're bringing to kids and all the kids that you're inspiring, because that's at the end of the day why we're here. So thank you so much, everyone. Special thank you to Allison. Again, see her face right now, but I know she can still hear us. So thank you so much for everyone. We can't wait to see you this year if you're coming to camp, and we can't wait to just continue to be part of our community together. We'll see you later this year. Thank you, everybody.